Good morning, Web3. I'm Nuno, and I'm here with Carlos, who is a data scientist and the founder of Charlie DAO. So, how are you, Carlos?
Hey, and I'm doing well. Looking at this crazy market crash, trying to figure out my next move. What about you?
Yeah, I'm doing great as well. A little shocked on everything that's happening right now. Trying to pick my perspective. Am I going to be pessimist about it or try and stay positive? So, yeah. What is Charlie DAO?
Yeah. So, I was in data science for a few years, doing public health, government consulting stuff with data science, a lot of R Shiny, things like that. I noticed there's a lot of people who were really talented data scientists who are in the Web2 world, and they heard a little bit of Web3. They were curious about it, and I wanted to make Charlie DAO as a way for people who have these Web2 skills to kind of on ramp into the Web3 world with a very specific set of goals, right? Like, we write things, we analyze things, and we build like small projects with the goal of people who have an idea, making a proof of concept, and then spinning out into their own company and getting funding and making like really big products that way. So yeah, we're like an incubator slash like media group slash analytics consulting thing. It's very freelance, crazy right now, but we're getting more and more organized over time.
Yeah, so for everyone that doesn't know, what is a DAO? What's your definition of a DAO?
Yeah, so DAOs, the word means decentralized autonomous organization. The idea being that you can have a bunch of people who don't necessarily have like a CEO or a leader still make financial decisions like investment decisions and like building decisions by essentially, coming to consensus in an autonomous way. So typically that means like voting, right? So like everyone buys and sells votes. That's what governance tokens are. You buy and sell votes, and then with your votes, you then choose to do things. In practice, we see a lot of DAOs that are mostly just like an LLC. So they're a classic company with like a team, they have funding, blah, 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 blah. And then the DAO is more like a community of users that helps choose what to build next with that like venture money. So, some DAOs are more decentralized than others. Some DAOs are more on chain than others. So they actually put their votes onto a blockchain versus putting their votes outside of a blockchain, and they just kind of come to consensus with another website or something. So there's
Yeah.
lots of different DAOs, lots of different structures, but in general, there are groups of people who don't necessarily form an organization like in a classic way, coming to decisions to invest money and build things.
Yeah. And why exactly would people want to all come together in this decentralized way and not uh, formally form a company?
Yeah, so there's a few different reasons. The more broad thing to think about is that the reason that corporations and LLCs exist is to limit liability. So people who want to innovate, right, like innovative people, they're going to fail. They're going to build things that don't work, and those things are going to lose money. And just because you have one failure doesn't mean that you should be bankrupt for the rest of your life and go to jail, right? So there's a lot of rules in lots of countries on how to be innovative in a legal way so that you can fail at a business and still not, lose your house, lose all your, sell all your clothes and watches and all that stuff and be broke. So that's a very classic mechanism. The Dutch East Indies Company in the 1600s kind of set the stage for corporations and corporate structures globally. And we've been doing that for hundreds of years. The idea of a DAO is that you can still have that structure technically. Delaware companies, Wyoming and the United States has the DAO LLC laws. Tennessee's coming out with DAO LLC laws. There are, it's trying to fit the corporate limited liability model for these groups that don't have a leader on paper. When you make a business in most countries, you have to have a person, and you have to have like a legal representative, and you have to file paperwork with the state, and you have to like follow all these laws, and that works. But it doesn't work always with like a DAO of like a bunch of people who like want to come to decisions together without picking a leader, without picking a person to run the show and building that hierarchy in. So, and I guess to answer more directly, right? Like the idea of the DAO is that you don't want to have too much hierarchy. You want things to be fluid. You want the community of users to control the money and control what gets built next. And we just got to figure out how to make sure that people in a DAO are legally protected from the decisions of the DAO. So there's a lot of work in that field in the governance world. I don't know how much you want to talk about that stuff, but it's very interesting legal theory. And I'm excited to see more and more DAOs figure out how to make really big decisions in autonomous ways with really big amounts of money and also be protected in case things fail, because they might.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's touch a little bit on the governance topic. How is Charlie DAO um, making decisions really? How is that working under the hood?
Yeah. So right now, we started out as a DAO in the purest sense. So we didn't have a token, we didn't have NFTs, we didn't have a treasury. We were just a bunch of people together organizing small projects. So we kind of just decided, like, okay, well, these four people in our DAO, there's 400 of us. These four people want to build this thing. So they go off into a channel and they pick the person who's going to do the paperwork, which was, for example, on my project that I'm launching soon called True Freeze. It's on-chain certificates of deposit. It's very boring DeFi stuff, but it's cool. I like it. I was the one who spun that out and made an LLC and contacted lawyers, and I formed a traditional legal structure for that project, which is separate from Charlie DAO. And that's the vision of Charlie DAO, is that people splinter off into groups to make things. And then once they're done making the thing, they can come back to the group kind of. So our goal is to build lots of small groups that might be traditional in their governance structure. But over the next few months, our goal is to actually get a little more DAO-like in the traditional sense. So we're thinking of, making the DAO LLC in Wyoming, maybe having tokens, having voting, using Gnosis Safe, using all these tools available to run organizations as a group in a decentralized way. So multi-signature wallets and fancy things like that. So that'll be new and fun and cool that we're building that out.
Yeah. So, what would you say is your primary goal with Charlie DAO? Besides joining, making communities and many different groups of people, what's your primary goal with it?
Yeah, our primary goal is people who have these Web2 talent and skills to be able to come in, learn really quickly what Web3 is about, and build things. And when I say build, I don't just mean like building software products, but also building like analytics reports and analytics applications, writing, making tutorials, just helping the space move forward from the angle of very technical people, as opposed to the angle of like very marketing people, which is very common with NFTs and things like that. Or people from business world who are very business savvy, but they're not necessarily like coding. So just kind of like plugging the hole of like, how do we get people who are technical funneled in so that they're available to the business people who have great ideas and the marketing people who are really good at building community, kind of closing that gap.
It seems like most of Web3 members and users all converge into this mission, which is grow the space. What do you think makes Web3 different from Web2 in the sense that on Web2 there's a lot of competition, right? You have a competitor and you're competing against them. But on Web3, it seems like you just want to help everyone grow and help the space grow. And although you have competitors, uh, it's not really the same, right?
Yeah, I think the difference is, in the Web2 world, we have seen very collaborative Web2 things. When Twitter and Facebook first came out, they had really loose data policies. It was easy to get access to their APIs. Facebook's whole pitch to small businesses was, look, you don't even need a website. Just make a Facebook business page. People who like you will comment, see your posts. They can call you directly. They can you can post your menu if you're a restaurant. Like, they were very collaborative. But what happens in those spaces is that you are not always paying attention to where the value is flowing, right? So for Facebook business pages or for Twitter API stuff, the value is flowing to the group that controls the data. So Facebook controls the data, who clicked what, who liked what, who posted what. Twitter, same thing, who liked what, who shared what, whatever. That data was being monopolized. And ultimately what we saw happen was these very collaborative groups. There were startups that were entirely built on the Twitter API. Like, they were Twitter add-on companies. What happened was these groups that monopolized the data said, well, look, we have the data and you don't. You rely on us. We don't rely on you. Your business model is actually very easy for us to copy paste. So we just will. We just will copy paste and destroy you. And they made a lot of money doing that, and that's what happened. The goal of Web3 and what's fundamentally different is that the data accrues to the public. Data exists on the public blockchain. So Ethereum, for example. So what that does is it really inverts the model a lot more to where, Twitter got big because of data, Facebook got big because of data. Now imagine all that data is publicly available and anyone can build a front end, build a website that lets you say, hey, like, these are your Facebook friends. And you can see your Facebook friends not just on Facebook. Like, you can go to other social media sites and have it all integrated. So by having the data public, it really unleashes like so much potential for interoperability. Having your Twitter friends and your Facebook friends all being able to see them in like the same user interface on the same network, flowing in between different conversations on different platforms. It's a totally different inversion, I guess is the point of that. So what I think happens in Web3 is that because everyone sees this data as public, they're like, oh, well, let's keep this data flowing. Let's get it big. And let's also interoperate with each other. So what we see in the Web3 DeFi space a lot is that someone will make a protocol like Curve, for example, which pays people to help people swap between different US dollar stablecoins. And then another protocol will come and say, hey, you're doing a great job. Instead of copy pasting you, I will just build on top of you. I will flow users of my program to your program, and I will take a cut from my users going to you, and you'll get the benefit. And this saves so much like time. It makes innovation so much easier. And what we're seeing is that lots and lots of micro businesses are forming, and they do their job really, really well. And you can make a profitable business without having to copy paste all that stuff. If you wanted to make a Facebook competitor today, you would have to copy paste so many things: the data architecture, the front end websites, the network effects of just having people join and invite their friends. You have to get people to re-upload their past pictures, re-upload their album. Like, it's really hard to copy paste all that. So being able to just say, well, what's the edge, right? Facebook's edge is in the advertising world. They look at this data and they can recommend ads to you. Well, what would a public version of that look like? A public version of that would look like everybody's doing things on the internet. It's being recorded in a public place. People obviously are opting into sharing that data. They shouldn't just have their data automatically be public. And then from there, you could have multiple people competing for advertisements on the same thing. So, I post on my friend's wall about this new golf thing, and Facebook shows me a golf club and they showed me a golf course. And they're both ads, but they're ads for different things, and they can both monetize in different ways. Now, I'm not supporting the ad economy. I think the attention economy on the internet is not that good, actually. But you can imagine that if the business model is ads based on top of network data of how people interoperate and talk to each other, it's better for everybody if more people can compete in that space. That's the economic theory. That was a long answer, sorry.
Yeah, it was not only a long answer, as a very good answer. Yeah. So you think the fact that data is on the hands of everyone, the data is public on blockchains like Ethereum, you think that's really disrupting monopolies?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think, yes. I think having data public and also having these other things be public. So like, when you make a competitor, when even the code for Facebook, right? Like, Facebook's built in React and they open source React, but even their code, even if their data was public, their code's not. And in the Web3 world, you typically get both. You get the data public and you have like an open source culture of building things.
Generally,
so
yes.
So it's not just the data, it's also like the entire thing is open. So like, you can look at, for example, Aave on Ethereum, look at the Ethereum data, look at the Aave code and say, okay, I'm going to copy paste their code onto a different blockchain. And also I'm going to make a token. And also I'm going to give that token to people who use Aave on Ethereum so that maybe they consider taking my token and coming over to my platform. You could imagine, right? Like, if you could spin up a new Facebook and say, okay, everyone currently using Facebook, I'm going to give you my stock and I'm going to let you own a piece of my company because you use Facebook and I want to take you from Facebook. what does that allow to happen, right? Like, what does the world look like if Facebook and Twitter, and I mean, Instagram's owned by Facebook now, but Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, all the social media companies were fighting to get users from each other through sharing ownership? Like, what does that enable? It's a totally different model of the economy if everyone owns pieces of the networks they use, as opposed to being like the product of the network they use. Like, I'm the thing that Facebook sells, and I don't own Facebook for contributing. And that's what Web3 lets you do. It lets you own the things you use as much as you want to own them, participate in their development, and in extreme situations, copy, paste, and take customers if they do something you don't like.
You said that most of the times, instead of copy and pasting, developers don't do it and choose to build on top of it.
Yeah.
What's the motivation behind that?
So the practical reality is that people have like products have momentum, right? So like if people are using Aave, for example, and people listening should definitely Google Aave, AAVE. It's a lending and borrowing platform, totally permissionless, all that stuff. It's really cool. Multiple
Really
billions
great.
of dollars in assets. You know, you can copy paste their code, but can you copy paste their, their marketing, copy paste their community, copy paste their like network effects, copy paste the word of mouth that's happening from current users? That's harder to copy paste. And often you just want to like extract value somewhere, and you want to capture value, and copy pasting the whole business model doesn't really always do that. I mean, you can add value just by making certain things easier. So for example, there's a product out there called, there's a bunch of these, but one of the popular ones is called ETHFLI. It's a flexible leverage index. And the idea is that instead of depositing ETH into Aave, borrowing US dollars against it, then switching the dollars back to more Ethereum and putting that back into the thing and repeating that process, you can do that in Aave. But what they've done is build an automation for that strategy. And so you can have these like fundamental protocols that are doing finance things, and then you can build automations on top of them, and you can capture some value from that automation. So for example, you could imagine, okay, I'm going to make a post on Facebook, and I'm going to also, everyone who likes it, I'm going to follow them back. And then also if their email's available, I'll email them. I'm not saying that's an ethical thing to do, but you can imagine that's something that marketing people do.
Yes.
Are you going to copy paste all of Facebook and rebuild all of Facebook to add that automation? No, you're going to try to make an automation so that you can sell it as a service, blah, blah, blah. So capturing value is a lot easier in Web3 by just finding a place that you can add some value and capturing a piece of that value add, as opposed to rebuilding the whole thing to then capture all that value. And for those more technical listeners, I mean, that's what's happening with layer ones, right? So like you can build on top of Ethereum, or you can raise $150 million to copy paste Ethereum and rebuild Ethereum into a competitor version and then own all of that. So we're seeing that a lot too. I mean, we're seeing a lot of blockchains that are just copy pasting Ethereum and trying to rebuild all of what Ethereum's gotten in network effects and users and marketing growth and word of mouth, all that stuff. It's some of them are working, some of them are not working. So people are trying to do both.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. Imagine the following scenario. A startup, Web3 startup, is building a new product, or they've launched an MVP of their product. It's really something that is common and common practice to make their code open source, so that it really increases trust, which I think it's the biggest factor. Trust. Isn't that risky for the startup that, well, they're still building, they don't have that network effect, they don't have that momentum and community? Isn't that risky that just someone comes in, copies that, and starts their own thing?
I mean, yes, of course. I think the open source culture is scary for a lot of people. Being in government consulting for years, I always wanted to open source things, and there's lots of fear around that. There's fear that people will copy paste it and it'll break and they'll blame you. or they'll copy paste it and beat you to market, or they'll copy paste it and make it better, and then you don't win the market that you thought you were going to win. I think we just got to focus on what, where are we adding value and where are we capturing the value. So it is scary, but ultimately it's not that easy. Like, it's just not that easy to like build a product in general. So just because the code's open source doesn't mean like everything else is open source, right? So, I'm launching TrueFreeze next week, which is a DeFi protocol. And all the code's always been open source, and no one's really copied us yet because we're still small. Like, you're not going to copy someone who hasn't really been proven to have product market fit. So we'll probably get copied in the future once we are launched and all that stuff. I just think it's a false worry, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about TrueFreeze. So what is TrueFreeze?
Yeah, so essentially, I noticed that a lot of the crypto world is all about risk, and try to do risky and riskier things to get more money sooner. And I was just like, well, I think that this is not the right way to go about it. I think we should do the opposite. Like, holding Bitcoin or Ethereum are risky enough. So to go from holding Bitcoin to, leverage deposits of wrapped Bitcoin on Aave and then staking that in a yield farm, like, that's so much, right? Like, people just want to have a pile of an asset and have that grow a respectable amount. And we see this in the real world. Less risky things in the investment world have more market cap than more risky things in general. Stocks are bigger than penny stocks. Bonds are bigger than stocks. Foreign exchange currencies are bigger than bonds. And the lower risk, the bigger the market. So we at TrueFreeze just said, well, let's make risk minimized crypto stuff. Let's make risk minimized DeFi and see what happens. So we developed a way to pretty much just lock your assets on chain and just say, okay, I'm going to confirm that I won't touch this pile of money for 1 year. And you confirm that on chain, and then you get paid a token to do that, for doing that, and you get an NFT that represents your deposit. So we've created certificates of deposit on chain that anyone can spin up. Then you can sell the token, the yield token, or you can do other stuff with it, and you just hold the NFT. And when you're done waiting, you say you lock it for a year. After a year, you just withdraw it and give the NFT back. And you profited. You got the amount of money you originally put in, plus you got the little token that was minted when you locked it in. Now, why would the token be valuable? We have a variety of things that make it valuable. Typically, it's early withdrawal fees. If you want to withdraw early, before 1 year, before you locked it, if you lock it for 1 year and you want to withdraw after 6 months, you pay penalty fees. The penalty fees is a revenue mechanism. The people who withdraw early, they pay fees. Now, of course, why are people choosing to pay fees? There's a variety of reasons, right? Like, why does the bond market exist? The bond market exists because people want to trade different bonds. They want to trade a 3-year bond for a 1-year bond. They want to trade a 2-year bond for a 6-month bond. We've developed that on chain using the certificates of deposits and using NFTs. So it's more for like institutions and stuff. It's not super relevant for like regular people who don't really touch bonds, but it pays people to make the bonds. And then of course they can sell them on any NFT marketplace. If you want to look at the finance of it, you can Google zero coupon bond. That's what these are. And yeah, it just brings a very simple, low risk. We're not layering on other protocols. We're not pushing money to anybody else's contracts. We're not doing leverage or liquidations or price oracles or collateral or all the risky things that happen. Our risk is very simple. It is a contract that exists, and obviously that contract could have a bug. We got audited just in case, so the audit went through well. So we're comfortable saying this is risk minimized DeFi. It's still a little risky, possibly. But yeah, that's what we wanted to build. We wanted to build risk minimized DeFi because I think that will help people slowly go from not holding ETH to holding a little bit of ETH to maybe locking a little bit of ETH to maybe doing the fancier things in the future, like taking loans against their ETH and staking the ETH and doing liquidity pools with the ETH and all that stuff. So we just want to be that on-ramp.
Yeah, when I read your LinkedIn posts yesterday about True Freeze, your pitch was really great, let me tell you. I'm just going to read it for everyone else and I'm going to post it as well on the video. I wanted to buy 50 ETH for 38 ETH, but nobody would sell it to me. So I created True Freeze to make it profitable for both of us. We've tokenized patients on chain, which is really, this is the major part. I'm more convinced than ever that risk minimized DeFi is the gateway to onboard people to crypto. So this is very important right here. We've tokenized patience on chain and risk minimized DeFi. That's, you think that's what will bring crypto to the masses?
I think if we do it easy enough and smooth enough, yes. I mean, I think a lot of people are holding ETH and they're holding it in apps, Binance, Coinbase, whatever. And what I hope to build is something that's so easy and risk-free and simple. And, it might not be a lot of yield, really. It might not be a lot of reward, but it's above zero reward. And we're hoping to be minimally risky. And my dream scenario is that these apps just integrate with it. It's a public good. I won't have any control of it once it's launched. It's just going to exist on the blockchain forever by itself. And what I hope happens is people integrate these apps to have protocols like this so people can access DeFi in an insured way, in a protected way. So yeah, and that's exactly like you said, right? Like I would love to buy $10 for $5, right? Well, how do I make that work? I have to find someone who has $10 who's willing to sell it for $5. Why would they ever do that? Well, they would do that if they think they could use the $5 to get more than $10 and the $10 are stuck for years. That's what happens. You have to have that time difference. I would pay, if I could have $10 in 10 years, how much would I pay for that? Probably not that much. I might pay like $5 for $10 in 10 years, something like that, or $8. And we don't have that right now in DeFi. We don't have that in crypto. We don't have the ability to say, oh, okay, I'll buy 10 ETH in 1 year for 9 ETH today. We don't have that. And that's what I wanted to make possible. The ability to buy ETH with ETH at the price of having to be patient. You have to wait.
Yes.
So I think the design works, and I hope that people adopt it. Hope that people use it. I'm going to use it. I can tell you that for sure.
My question was, what do you think scares people away from crypto and DeFi, DeFi especially?
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that scare people are it's a totally different world of actually accessing your stuff. So, in Facebook, if you want to access your pictures, you use your email and your password. And if you forget your password, you click forget your password and they email you a reset to your email, right? We don't really have that for crypto Web3 stuff yet, right? Because you have a private key that is your key to your public address. And that public address is where all your assets are stored. So it's like if you lose your private key, you're done. You lose it all. Most people don't want to have one password that you forget and then it's a wrap. You're like lost all your money. That's crazy. We do have some solutions to that, right? There's central exchanges that you can trust. There's banks that you can trust that will let you buy Bitcoin and things like that. Most of them don't have all the assets, and the vast majority of them don't let you do anything. You can't actually use your email and password to then use your credit card that goes to Stripe, and then the Stripe turns into USDC, and then you put the USDC into Aave. Like they don't have that, and we will in the future have that. So I think the biggest one is that it's like, oh well, it's really not easy. Like you're gonna have to get MetaMask and get your own password, private key, and then you have to make sure to never ever lose your seed phrase or private key, or else you'll get hacked. You have to interact with weird contracts. You don't know how to read code. How are you gonna make sure these contracts aren't sketchy? Some people will give you free NFTs, but if you do anything with the NFT, they steal all your money. It's the Wild West. It's so bad. And even back in in 2018 and 2020, the user experience was terrible, and it really hasn't gotten better, unfortunately. So I think this crash we've recently had is well deserved because of that mostly. The other reasons are, it just feels scammy. You go on Instagram, and what do you see? You see Mike Tyson and these actors and actresses and stuff trying to get you to buy their NFT project, and they lie. They're literally lying. Oh, we're gonna make a video game. Oh, we're gonna make a metaverse. No, they're not. They're trying to sell an ugly picture and raise like $3 million, and then they're gonna run away with it. And that's like I literally don't even touch Instagram crypto stuff because I think that's just where the scammers love to live. Twitter too, Discord too, Telegram too. Like the scammers just saw the opportunity and how much money was flowing and how poorly educated on the technical details regular people were, and they've just been attacking relentlessly. So it's crazy hard. I think the third one, of course, is the irreversibility. So the first reason is it's bad user experience. Second one is it's full of scams that are super hard to deal with. And the third one is that it's not reversible, which is tied to the first two. If you type the wrong, I mean, this isn't technically true actually, but if you type the wrong address in a bank transfer, you can call your bank and they'll sort it out with the other bank to like reverse it, right? If your credit card is stolen, I only use a credit card for everything. It has fraud protection. If someone steals your credit card and buys things, you just call the bank, they cancel it, they ignore the transaction, it's all insured.
Debit cards are stupid.
You don't have that in crypto. In crypto, you have to, if you want to send your friend like some ETH, you have to get their 35 something character code of 0 X's and 3's, 9 F's, A, D, B, whatever. And you better not mistype it because your money will go to somebody else and you're not getting it back unless you can contact that person. And so it's really, it's all the problems of cash, right? Like you wouldn't just walk downtown at night with $10,000 in cash in your hand, but that's what crypto is at all times. It's digital cash. It's just holding tens of thousands of dollars in your hand on the internet. And then someone like tricks you into dropping it and they steal it. So it's poor user experience, full of scams, and then it's not reversible, which is like huge problems with fraud and stuff. So we got a long way to go to fix all these things and make it easy. I have family who want to get involved. My father, I'm married to my wife's dad, my father-in-law. He's really interested in this stuff. I'm not going to sit him down and teach him MetaMask and RPCs and private keys and protocol design and tokenomics. Like he has better things to do. He just needs to put like 1% of his money into a Bitcoin thing occasionally as he gets paid. That's plenty for him. And it's plenty for most people.
Absolutely. Not everyone should be exposed to the same risks because people are different. Do you think that not everyone is made for DeFi yet?
Yes, I think the vast majority of people don't need DeFi. The revolution is not really about DeFi, right? Like the revolution isn't about being able to have internet native value that can't be taken away from you if you can keep the private key safe. Like DeFi and crypto are like, they're like a fundamental thing that's useful. Like cash is useful and crypto is useful. If you live in a country where you have 25% like inflation and only 8% GDP growth and your currency sucks, like your currency is constantly getting devalued, everything's getting more and more expensive, and you're not allowed to have dollars because if you try to get dollars, you get in trouble. Your bank has to report you to the government if you try to leave their dollar and use American dollars. That sucks. And crypto is for that group of people. The number one countries for crypto adoption are not like Western Europe and United States. They're like Vietnam, India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Argentina. Now, it depends on who you ask. You got to check the list out and adjust it for purchase price parity and things like that. But it's not for people who have FDIC insured checking accounts and who have credit cards and who are fully banked and live with the US dollar, the best, number one currency in the world and stuff. Like it's not really for them. The revolution is people being able to choose to hold assets, even when the governments that they are forced to live with because they were born somewhere they didn't get to choose, really, really, really don't want them to. That's the revolution. Now, there's a lot of negatives with that, right? Like people will hold US dollars instead of holding their local government money. And if they want to pay taxes, they have to figure out how to get back. And the government's going to fight central exchanges and they're going to make it really hard. And they don't want people to like exit their bad currency. But at the end of the day, that's what it's for. The revolution is for people who want to have stable value, accrue value that can't be taken from them. Right. And I think a lot of the conversation around like Western Europe and United States and crypto is like fundamentally not that special. Like, I don't know.
Yes, then you don't think crypto and web3 came to replace what's already here?
A little bit, right? I mean, I think smart contracts can automate a lot of things in the financial system, and also the financial system, the global financial system, is very very hidden. It's opaque. It's like they don't want you to know what's happening. You can't really know what bank is doing what. And so, with all the data being public on public blockchains, you can do things like notice very large accounts doing certain trades. You can notice these big groups taking out big loans. And I'm not everyone's going to notice that, but enough people will notice it, and there'll be enough historical data that you can at least have a chance to figure out what the heck's going on. Like in 2008 with the subprime mortgage loan crisis, who could you trust? You couldn't really trust the rating agencies because they knew that if they didn't rate these bonds well, that their competitors were going to rate the bonds well. If you bundle up enough Fs, you can get a D. Bundle up enough Ds, you can get a B. Bundle up enough Bs, you can get an A. Like, it's crazy what they did. And that would be much harder. It would still be very possible, but it'd be much harder to do and get that big on a public blockchain because there would just be people who are just like, oh, hey, this address, this person who gets like pretty medium income owns 5 houses worth 20 times their net worth. Now, I'm not saying everyone should have all of their information totally public and know who which person is what, but I think it's generally okay if, like, I think some things should be public. Like, we should know that N individual has 20 houses that they can't afford, and also that this is the same for 100,000 other people, and thus the leverage in the mortgage system is like 10x or something. Like, we should have that industry level knowledge, and we don't have that in a transparent way. So I do think Web3 blockchain stuff will automate out a lot of bankers, automate out a lot of things, automate out a lot of conflicts of interest, also like make data transparent. But that's more industrial uses. I'm not sure how useful it is to the average person. The average person just needs to have internet cash that can't be taken from them and be allowed to do finance things to the extent that they want to do them.
So let's just give people a way to find you and where they can look into Charlie DAO and TrueFreeze. So where can people find you? And
yeah, so truefreeze.xyz is the easiest place to read about TrueFreeze, and then Charlie DAO, it's easiest to find me on LinkedIn, realistically.
That's it. Thank you for coming. It was a really nice talk, and thank you for joining me. And yeah,
thank you.